Welcome to another episode of the Bark Brigade podcast by Dogzilla Magazine. Today we will talk about an important topic and offer you a guide to help all families that owns a dog or other pet.
Yeah, and we're really digging into something incredibly special today.
We absolutely are. So for this deep dive, we're looking at a fascinating interview from Dogzilla Magazine with author and animal advocate Lara Magallon.
Right. And her work is just, well, it's phenomenal.
It really is. And we're going to start off by focusing on Lara herself, her personal background,
Yeah.
because, you can't really separate her life from her mission.
No, you really can't. They are completely intertwined.
Exactly. And then we'll shift into this really in-depth discussion about her new book, which is called Dogs Who Changed Our Lives.
Which is such a powerful title, honestly.
It is. But before we even get into the stories, there is this massive, I guess you'd call it a real-world hook that we need to talk about right now.
The funding aspect.
Yes. Every single purchase of this book, like all the earnings, they go directly to funding animal rescue efforts.
Which is just incredible. I mean, it's not just raising awareness.
No, not at all. It means that, reading a book literally translates to saving dogs' lives. Buying it helps so many dogs.
And that's what makes Lara such a compelling figure in this space. She's not just a writer.
Right. She has this wild, incredibly unique background.
Yeah, if you look at her resume from the Dogzilla Magazine interview, she's a former board member of the North County Humane Society.
So she has that gritty, on-the-ground experience.
Exactly, but she backs that up with a master's in business management and a doctorate in theology.
Wait, a master's in business and a doctorate in theology?
I know, it sounds like an oxymoron, right?
You're right.
But this unique blend of strategy and spirituality is exactly what makes her such a uniquely effective advocate.
That is just fascinating. So for everyone listening to us right now, I want you to think about something. Have you ever looked at your pet sitting there on the couch and felt like they saved you just as much as you saved them?
Oh, I think every pet owner has felt that at some point.
Totally. Well, this deep dive is really designed to validate that exact feeling for you and to show you how to channel it into actual action.
So let's unpack how Lara got here. Because nobody just wakes up one day with an MBA and a theology degree and decides to, dedicate their life to shelter dogs.
Right. There has to be a catalyst.
There was. And the text describes it as a really painful period in her life. She was navigating a brutal divorce.
And it wasn't just the divorce, which is hard enough, but she was basically abandoned by her married friends.
Yeah, the interview explicitly mentions that. Her friends didn't want this attractive, newly single woman around their husband.
Which is just, that is devastating. You lose your partner, and then your entire support network just vanishes.
It's the definition of social isolation. But she found solace in her Jack Russell Terrier, Granny.
Oh my gosh, Granny. The way Granny is described in this interview is just the best.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does. There is this incredible image where Lara talks about Granny eating dinner with her. But not just that, actually holding the steering wheel while Lara drove.
Paws right on the wheel.
Literally.
Yeah.
I picture Granny as this literal and emotional co-pilot during the absolute most turbulent flight of Lara's life.
That's a great way to put it. From a psychological standpoint, she used her connection to Granny and her writing to survive that trauma.
Because she was also married to a man who was struggling with mental illness, right?
Yes. And that creates a highly volatile environment. She created this alternate reality of doing good through her writing to basically save herself.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
It's one thing to love a dog, right? And to find comfort in a pet after a bad breakup. But how does someone go from finding comfort in a Jack Russell to dedicating their entire waking life to saving shelter animals?
It's a great question. And the article points to something very specific. Profound grief. It was the grief catalyst.
Okay, unpack that for me.
So right as she's leaning on Granny for support, Granny starts dying of cancer.
Oh, that's just heartbreaking.
It is. It's a slow decline. And at the exact same time, another dog of hers, Bandit, suddenly passes away.
So she's just drowning in loss.
Completely. But instead of withdrawing, which is what most people would do, her coping mechanism was to adopt.
Wait, really? While Granny was still dying?
Yes. She had this makeshift hospice room set up for Granny, and she feared she looked like an unfit owner to the rescue agencies.
Because her house was basically a canine hospital ward.
Exactly. But she still went ahead and adopted 2 puppies, Rex and a puppy named Jeanette.
And Jeanette was deaf, right?
Yes, deaf when she adopted her, and now 10 years later the dog is also blind.
Wow. That takes a very special kind of person.
It does. But the profound lesson Laura shares here is that the absolute best way to honor a lost pet's legacy is by taking that empty space and saving another life.
That is so powerful. You're not replacing the dog, you're rerouting the love.
Precisely. And that rerouting of love is perfectly mirrored in how her writing evolved over time.
Oh, for sure. Because she didn't start out writing these deep, heavy spiritual books.
No, not at all. It started with something much lighter.
Yeah, her early writing was actually a book called Things We Say to Dogs. And the origin of this is so
A
funny.
street corner story, right?
Yes, she was standing on a street corner with Granny, and she just looks down and says, "I can't keep walking. I must go to work. Someone in the house needs to pay the bills, and it isn't you."
I mean, we've all had that exact conversation with our pets.
Totally. You sleep on a couch all day, I have to go pay the mortgage. It's hilarious.
But from those lighthearted, humorous observations, her work really deepened.
It took a major shift.
It did. She transitioned into writing the Heavenly Dog Father prayer books and then into her current work.
And that transition really mirrors her own personal growth,
Yeah. Absolutely. It shows her unapologetic acceptance of her spiritual belief.
which is what exactly.
Yeah. Her core belief is that God put her on this earth to guard his animal kingdom.
Wow. That is a massive calling.
It is. And this brings us right back to that fascinating contradiction we mentioned earlier.
The education background.
Right. She has this master's in business from the University of Redlands, combined with that doctorate from Emerson Theological Institute.
It's just such a rare combo. You usually get one or the other.
Exactly. But these two worlds collide beautifully in her advocacy.
How so? Like, how does a business degree help save dogs?
Well, the business strategy ensures her actions actually make a tangible, measurable impact. She knows how to manage resources and run a campaign.
Okay, that makes sense. The
Yeah.
logistics of saving lives.
Right. And then the spirituality keeps the whole mission grounded in endless, bottomless compassion.
I love that. It's like having a perfectly tuned engine, but the fuel is pure empathy.
That's a perfect analogy. And she's always been this creative force. There's this charming anecdote from her childhood in the article.
Oh, the book reports. I love this part.
It's so funny. Tell them about it.
So apparently as a kid, she was super creative, but also, quote unquote, lazy when it came to assigned reading.
Like most kids, honestly.
Right. So instead of actually reading the books, she would just invent entire plots for books she hadn't read and submit them for her book reports.
And she never got caught.
Never. I mean, imagine the vivid imagination it takes to fake an entire novel for a teacher and get away with it.
It's impressive. And now all that incredible imagination is channeled entirely into purposeful storytelling.
Which perfectly sets up her new book, Dogs Who Changed Our Lives.
Let's really dive into that book because the way she curated these stories is fascinating.
Yeah, she didn't just like pull random viral posts off the internet. It was a very intentional process.
Very intentional. The article says she spent her early mornings walking and praying for guidance.
Praying to find the right narratives.
Exactly. She wanted to find stories that would make readers feel like they aren't alone in this world.
And out of all the stories in the book, the interview really focuses on this one defining story about a man named David Ware.
This story is just, it's gut-wrenching, but so beautiful.
It really is. So David was down to his absolute last $2. That's it.
Complete rock bottom.
Yeah. And he uses that money to buy a tiny hot dog. But instead of just eating it, he chooses to split it with his dog, Bonnie Girl.
He breaks it right in half.
And this story, it just perfectly answers this fundamental question that Lara brings up.
Which is, why are dogs considered miracles?
Right. And what's the answer based on David's story?
Well, it's because a dog's love is entirely devoid of human conditions.
Zero conditions.
Zero. A dog doesn't care if you are rich, poor, fat, slim. They don't care if you've had plastic surgery.
They don't care about your credit score or your job title.
Exactly. A dog living on the street with a homeless owner is just as fiercely grateful and loyal as a dog living in a giant mansion.
It's so true. We humans judge each other constantly based on those metrics, but dogs just completely bypass all of that.
They only see who you are at your core.
And that kind of unconditional bond, it really creates a global connection among dog lovers.
It's a universal language.
It really is. The article illustrates this perfectly by sharing the story of Lara's dog, Peanut.
Oh, Peanut. That happened pretty recently, right?
Yeah, Peanut passed away in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And Lara had this deep, profound prayer leading up to it.
She wanted him to pass peacefully at home.
Yes. She didn't want him to die on a cold metal table at a vet's office. She just prayed he could die in his own bed.
And he did.
He did. But what happened after is the crazy part. She shared this experience online, and the global response was overwhelming.
How many messages did she get?
Over 5,000 messages from her community.
5,000! That is staggering.
I know. People from all over the world reaching out to support her. It just proves that the grief of losing a dog is a completely universal language.
It transcends borders, politics, everything.
Totally. So if you're listening to this, I want you to just think for a second. Think about the quietest, most honest moments you have with your pets.
Those moments where there's no performance, no stress.
Exactly. Because Laura points out that in our fast-paced, super noisy world, that silent connection with a dog is where we actually find our true humanity.
It's where we can finally just exhale.
Right. But, and this is the hard pivot, knowing how sacred that bond is makes the reality of the shelter system so much harder to swallow.
It does. And we have to talk about the shelter reality because Lara has that frontline experience at the North County Humane Society.
She has seen the absolute focus parts of this.
She has. And she constantly contrasts day one of a shelter dog with what that dog looks like a few weeks later.
Paint that picture for us. What does day one look like?
Day one is heartbreaking. The dog's head is down. They're often mangy, tick-infested, completely malnourished.
And just terrified.
Terrified. Their nervous system is entirely shot. But then you look at that same dog a few weeks later after receiving care.
They're trusting, healthy, full of life.
Exactly. And Lara explains that while the physical transformation is obvious, it's the inner transformation that is truly profound.
The healing of their spirit.
Right. But we really need to shatter some misconceptions here, because society has this incredibly unfair view of shelter dogs.
Oh, don't even get me started. This makes me so passionate. There's this huge misconception that if a dog is in a shelter, they must be broken or bad.
People think, oh, what did that dog do to end up behind bars?
Yes. But the heartbreaking reality, which Lara points out, is that these dogs almost always end up there due to human failures.
Systemic and personal human failures.
Exactly. People lose their jobs, they lose their homes, and this one just infuriates me, the excuse of getting new carpet.
The new carpet excuse, it's horrifying.
They literally dump a living, breathing family member at a kill shelter because they don't want their new rug to get dirty.
It shows how some people view pets as disposable accessories rather than living beings.
It's just sickening. But on the flip side of that human failure is the human capacity for immense healing, specifically when it comes to senior dogs.
Yes. The senior dog bond is something Lara focuses on heavily.
Why is that? Why are senior or overlooked dogs so special in her eyes?
Because adopting an older dog creates the most profound type of healing. Often, the human adopting them is a bit broken or grieving themselves.
And the dog is definitely broken.
Right. So both the human and the dog may be broken, but they actually heal together. It's a mutual rescue.
That is so beautiful. Let's talk about some specific dogs from the text that embody this. Let's talk about Shadow.
Shadow is a deeply moving story.
So Shadow was this 14-year-old wobbly gray dog.
14 is ancient in the shelter world.
It really is. And he was meant to be euthanized. He looked mangy. His body was failing.
Most people would walk right past him.
But Lara didn't. She took him in. And despite his fragile appearance, he became this fierce, beautiful protector for her.
He spent his final days knowing he had a job and knowing he was loved.
Yes. And when he eventually passed away, he was buried with dignity in her backyard, not just thrown away.
Which is how every dog deserves to go out. And then there's Maynard's story.
Oh, Maynard. This one is tough.
It is. Maynard was a dog who was kept on a chain his entire life.
Just living outside, chained up.
And when he was found, he weighed 25 pounds.
Wait, how much is he supposed to weigh?
He should have been 75 pounds.
Oh my God. He was just a skeleton.
It's just bones. But the incredible part is how the community rallied around him. They proved the power of second chances.
Which brings us right back to the core mission we set up at the top of this deep dive.
The tangible impact of the community.
Right. The power of the purchase.
Yeah.
Because buying dogs who changed our lives isn't just a simple transaction.
No, Lara views it as an intervention.
Exactly. Tell us exactly where the money goes.
It goes directly into funding meals, vaccines, and critical medical care for rescues, just like Maynard.
But let me push back on this a little bit, because I think listeners might be skeptical.
Fair enough. What's the skepticism?
We always hear charities say, every dollar counts. But does a tiny donation or the royalty from one book really change anything for a massive shelter system?
It absolutely does, and Lara uses exact examples to clarify this.
Like what?
Well, even a few dollars can literally buy a parvo vaccine.
And parvo is deadly.
Highly deadly and very expensive to treat. So that tiny book purchase prevents a disease which alters a stray dog's entire trajectory. Or it buys a specialized meal for a starving dog.
It's the microeconomics of saving lives.
Exactly. Furthermore, she reminds us that adopting a dog actually saves two lives.
Explain that, because I love that concept.
When you adopt the dog and take them home, you save them, obviously, but you also open up a spot at the shelter.
The kennel is empty.
Right. And that newly opened spot allows the shelter to take in another dog off the street who might have otherwise been euthanized for space.
You save two lives with one action. That's incredible. And to support all these actions, Lara has built this massive compassionate community,
Yes, her Facebook group.
which is also called Dogs Who Changed Our Lives.
It serves as an extension of the book, basically.
Yeah, it's this incredibly safe space for people to go online and share their rescue journeys.
And to find comfort in grief like she did with Peanut.
Exactly. And it's where they rally around emergency cases like Maynard. So she's not just writing, she's mobilizing an army.
And she has very grand ambitions for this army moving forward.
What are her future plans?
Well, she's working on a new book right now that merges biblical teachings with dog figures.
Leaning into that theology degree.
Precisely. But practically speaking, in 2026, she plans to hit the road.
Like a tour.
Yes, virtual and in-person events. And her goal is to raise funds to save 1 million dogs.
1 million dogs.
1 million. Her philosophy is straight from the Bible. Ask and you shall receive.
That is just, I mean, the scale of that is mind-blowing.
It's audacious, but given her track record, you can't bet against her.
So, for the person listening to us right now,
Hmm.
what is the call to action? What does Lara want them to do today?
Her advice is extremely blunt. She says, stop talking, do it.
Stop talking. Do it. I love that.
Whether it's adopting, donating $5, or just sharing a shelter post online, you have to take action.
And she also encourages people to write down their own dog story, right?
Yes, she references Habakkuk 2.23, which is about writing your vision down.
Making it plain.
Exactly. Just start writing. Share the love you have for your animal with the world.
Because the world desperately needs those positive stories.
It really does.
Well, this has been an absolutely phenomenal conversation. But before we wrap up, we want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought.
A little something to chew on after the deep dive ends.
Exactly. So we've talked so much about how dogs are capable of loving us with absolute zero conditions.
They don't judge our past or our bank accounts or our mistakes.
They just love us.
Uh,
So the question is, what would our human communities look like if we tried to apply just a fraction of that shelter dog grace to how we treat one another?
Imagine that if we just offered each other a baseline of unconditional acceptance.
It would completely revolutionize how we interact if we could just be a little more like the dogs who changed our lives.
I think that's a perfect thought to end on.
Thank you for listening, dear Brigadiers, and if you have any questions, visit the source article on Dogzilla magazine at dogzilla.com. That was all for this episode, and until the next time, bye to all listeners of the Bark Brigade podcast.